How the Biden administration is preparing for Gaza after the war. Officials from the Biden administration have been secretly working for weeks to create a multi-phase post-war strategy that calls for the eventual takeover of the Gaza Strip by a reorganized Palestinian Authority. Although it's not a perfect solution, American officials see it as the best of very bad options for a region where thousands of Palestinians have been killed and more than 1.5 million have been displaced due to fighting between Israel and Hamas militants. It might also set the United States and the Israeli government on a collision course. Two U.S. officials, a State Department official and an administration official familiar with the discussions, claim that since mid-October, officials at the State Department, the White House, and other locations have been outlining the strategy's components in a number of position papers and interagency meetings. Although Secretary of State Antony Blinken and others in the administration have publicly declared that a revitalized Palestinian Authority should run the Strip, they haven't unveiled details of how that would work. But they've already run into resistance from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has effectively ruled out a future Gaza role for the Palestinian Authority. Israeli officials for the most part are unwilling to discuss much beyond the current war, which was sparked by a vicious October 7 Hamas attack that killed some 1,200 Israelis. Still, the U.S. strategists drawing up the plans keep coming back to the Palestinian Authority, which governs parts of the West Bank but has long been beset by allegations of corruption and inefficiency. It's the most viable option, they say. We're stuck, the State Department official said. There's a strong policy preference for the PA to play a governing role in Gaza, but it has significant legitimacy and capability challenges. The broad vision emerging from the internal talks is that of a multi-phase reconstruction of Gaza once the heavy fighting between Israeli troops and Hamas militants ends. An international force will be needed to stabilize the region in the immediate aftermath, followed by a revamped Palestinian Authority taking over long-term. Key parts of the plan include increasing security-related aid that the State Department's Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs offers the Palestinian Authority and allowing for a bigger role for the U.S. Security Coordinator, which has a track record of advising Palestinian security forces, the officials said. Ultimately, we want to have a Palestinian security structure in post-conflict Gaza, a senior Biden administration official said. All of the officials were granted anonymity to discuss a highly sensitive topic. They stressed that the ideas being floated are nascent and subject to many unpredictable variables. U.S. officials expect the heavy fighting to last several more weeks, at least. A spokesperson for the White House National Security Council declined to comment. Any strategy set forth by the United States will face numerous obstacles, including Israeli skepticism and Arab frustration, even though regional players and analysts generally agree that Washington will need to play a critical role in the post-war phase. How you get there and what actually exists in Gaza to do that is really, really hard, as there isn't a clean or easy answer, one of the U.S. officials said. The planning process is spearheaded by senior National Security Council official Brett McGurk. He is being assisted by Terry Wolf, a veteran of the Defense and State Departments now at the NSC. Other key figures involved include Barbara Leaf, Dan Shapiro, and Hadi Amr, who hold key Middle East roles at the State Department. The State Department units that deal with the Middle East and policy planning are involved, but other parts of the government are weighing in as needed. Perhaps the trickiest immediate challenge is figuring out who will play a role in stabilizing Gaza in an interim post-fighting phase. While Arab countries have appeared hesitant or outright unwilling to provide troops for Gaza, in more recent conversations some have seemed more open to the idea, the second U.S. official said. The Biden administration has ruled out sending U.S. troops. One idea that's been bandied about is asking the United Arab Emirates to help rebuild health facilities or train civil servants. The United Nations could play a role in Gaza in a post-war phase, at the very least on the humanitarian front, the second U.S. official said. However, the Israeli government is not a fan of the UN, viewing it as biased against Israelis. Neighboring Egypt is likely to play a major role in a post-war Gaza. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's suggestion that a future Palestinian state be demilitarized with a temporary international security presence has made the rounds in Biden administration circles. The big unknown is what exactly is going to be left of Hamas in Gaza, the senior Biden administration official said. Even if the group's numbers are low, their access to weapons could dramatically alter the calculus of countries considering sending troops. One thing the United States hopes to see is more clear denunciations of Hamas by Arab rulers, many of whom privately despise the Islamist militant group, which they see as a potential threat to their own governments. Hamas wrested control of Gaza away from the Palestinian Authority more than 15 years ago. The key to getting many Arab leaders on board for serious post-war planning appears to be that the creation of a Palestinian state alongside Israel is the ultimate end goal. The State Department officials said American officials are largely motivated by that same outcome, but planning at the moment centers on stabilizing Gaza. One reason President Joe Biden and his aides have refused to call for a long-term ceasefire is that they support the Israeli objective of destroying Hamas, which Washington views as a major obstacle to a two-state solution. The current Palestinian Authority is disliked by many Palestinians, who view it as corrupt, out of touch and weak. It has not held an election in years and is run by 88-year-old Mahmoud Abbas, who has yet to clearly denounce the Hamas attack. A spokesperson for the Palestinian Authority could not be reached for comment. Abbas is reported to have previously said that the Palestinian Authority won't take over Gaza on the back of Israeli tanks, meaning it does not want to be seen as a puppet. Although U.S. officials, including Biden himself, use the word revitalized to describe their hopes for a future Palestinian Authority running Gaza, words like reformed, revamped or restructured are probably more applicable. In response to a request for comment from the Israeli government, an Israeli official, granted anonymity to discuss an issue still under review, said the gap between the United States and Israel is much smaller than what meets the eye. Both administrations agreed that the PA in its current form cannot govern Gaza, the official said. A revitalized, reformed one might be able to do it. But we're still not in discussions about what exactly this reform should look like. Still, it's not clear what, if any, level of change to the Palestinian Authority would satisfy Netanyahu or his political allies. Netanyahu has at times called for a new Palestinian governance structure in Gaza while also suggesting Israel should have some sort of general security control. His comments have not always been consistent, but they do not suggest an openness to future Palestinian Authority rule in Gaza. The Israeli leader has long been accused of intentionally trying to undermine the Palestinian Authority as a way to avoid the creation of a Palestinian state. Netanyahu insists the Palestinian Authority is not a serious partner in the quest for a two-state solution and that it promotes hatred against Jews. That said, it's also unclear how much longer Netanyahu and his right-wing coalition will be in charge of Israel. Netanyahu is deeply unpopular, with many Israelis blaming him for the October 7 Hamas attack. U.S. officials expect his eventual departure from the scene, but he's managed political comebacks before. U.S. officials haven't had as much luck as they'd like in getting Israeli leaders to discuss in a meaningful way what a post-war Gaza will look like, the administration official said. And some analysts and officials in Washington worry that even trying to define what counts as the end of the war will over time become a point of contention between Israel and the United States. It's not as if someone will blow a whistle and everyone lays down arms. The Israelis are in no mood to talk about the day after, the administration official said. They're very much focused on today, the day of, so there hasn't been a whole lot of traction there. Despite this, there's virtually no internal Biden administration talk of conditioning U.S. military aid to Israel as a way to pressure the country to agree to some of the ideas under discussion in Washington, the State Department official said. In an interview that aired this weekend on ABC News, Ron Dermer, a top Netanyahu aide, downplayed the idea of a Palestinian state, although he said an eventual political settlement could be reached with the Palestinians. I know that everybody is racing forward right now to try to establish a Palestinian state. For the people of Israel, they don't even understand that because we just suffered the equivalent of 29/11s, he said. And I think the last thing you want to do is send a message to any terror group that the way you're going to achieve some sort of aim is to perpetrate a massive terror attack. As it plans ahead, the Biden administration is consulting outside analysts, civil society activists and others, some of W.